Welcome to the next daily drawing. Today we're going to be drawing a fox. I really like how foxes, they just kind of like jump and then they like dive headfirst into the snow. So I thought this would be a pretty fun pose to draw for today. Alright, so to get started, we're going to first start off with the body. So they have very, just kind of like a elbow macaroni shaped body. So that's what I'm going to start with. So I'm going to start with just a frown to kind of make up the back of the body. And it's a very exaggerated frown too because they're kind of diving down. And then I'm just going to round off the edges with parentheses like this, very gently. And then I'm just going to add another frown for the inside of the body like this. Be careful not to make it too thin, especially up here, because you want to make sure that the rib cage isn't like too skinny. Otherwise it wouldn't make logical sense. So make sure it's about like a good noodle, I guess. All right, after you get your noodly body done, then what we want to do is we want to draw the head. So if this right here is kind of the edge of the body, we want to make the head a little bit further out, and it's pretty small compared to the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit further forward, so I want to still follow in that direction, and then I'm going to draw the roundness of the head a little bit further down. And then after that, I can go ahead and connect it back to the body, or if I wanted to, I can go ahead and do the muzzle. That's kind of up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and connect it back to the body. So the top of the head should connect to the back of the body, and then the bottom of the head should connect to the bottom of the body like this. So that can kind of give us our thickness of the neck. And of course, because it has so much fluff, we're going to make it a little bit fluffier, and that's going to increase the thickness just a little bit, but this will work for now. All right, so the direction is very important whenever it comes to the muzzle. So because the fox is looking down, I'm going to draw about halfway down into the head. I'm going to actually just draw a straight line going down like this, and then I'm going to curve it and a really big smile to connect it to the bottom of the jaw like this. That's going to help us get the very kind of thin muzzle look that is what a fox has typically. And then this one right here, it has a closed mouth. So all you have to do to close the mouth is you're just going to draw a little bit of a smile on here. And you can make it smile, you can make it frown. If you want it open, all you have to do is just kind of like lower that jaw down just a little bit. So that'll be the kind of smile of the mouth. And then of course the nose is just going to be on the tip. So all I'm doing is I'm just drawing a parenthesis on the tip of the nose and then just filling it in so that I have the tip of the nose. All right, so that's a pretty simple muzzle, especially since we're doing profile view. Profile view is probably one of the easiest views to draw a muzzle in. All right, now that we got the muzzle, I'm going to go ahead and keep my forehead like this. This is a decent forehead. And then what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw the ears before I draw the eye, just so that it can help me line up where my eye needs to be. So I'm going to draw this ear first because it seems a little bit simpler. All it is it's just kind of a slight diagonal line slash frown line, and then it's followed up by a fairly flat kind of frown line as well. So I noticed that that's where the head meets the neck, so right about here where that circle meets the neck. And then I'm just going to draw a slight diagonal line slash frown, so it's not perfectly straight. And then I'm just going to curve it back in like this with kind of another diagonal line that's kind of almost a frowny face as well. And then I do kind of see the white of the ear, so I'm just going to draw another line like this as a parallel, and then I'm just going to shade in this one so that I know that that's the black of the ear. All right, this other ear is a little bit trickier because it is pointing at us, so it doesn't look like a triangle. It actually looks kind of like an oval or like a half a bowl. So what I'm going to do for this ear is I'm actually going to start really close to this other one, but not touching it. I'm going to start with a big frown like this. And then after I have that big frown, I'm going to cap it off with a flat line like this. This is going to be the back of the ear, so that would be the black part of the ear. And then for the front part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very kind of small parenthesis on both sides, like this. And then I'm just going to fill in the inside, just a little bit of a black, but I'm leaving a little bit of a white gap above it. That would be the interior of the ear. So it looks kind of like a really awkward eye. Just allow it to, and then once you get the eyes and stuff drawn, it'll make more sense. So that'll be the inner ear, and this is the back of the ear. That's because it's tilting towards us. It's kind of like if you look at your finger from side view, it looks totally normal, but whenever you point it at you, it looks kind of like an awkward nub. That's just what it does whenever you're talking about perspective. So that's what this ear is doing in this particular case. All right, so now that I have my ear and I have my nose, I can figure out where to put my eye. So in this case, it's going from the corner of the nose across and lining it with the corner of the ear. So I want to go from the corner of the ear, go across to the corner of the nose, like this. And then typically the eye is going to be really close to where the muzzle meets the face. So this is where my muzzle's meeting the face. So that's where I'm going to start the eye. For a fox's eye, especially in profile view is going to look different from front view. So in profile view, what you would do is you would actually draw kind of a diagonal line first, like this. And then we're going to switch it into kind of turning it into a slight frown, like this, so that we get kind of a almost greater than or less than sign or upside down V. And then what I want to do is I want to add a kind of a parenthesis or a smile at the bottom to kind of create that eye shape. So it's kind of looking like greater than or less than sign that's slightly curvy, and then I'm adding a smile on the bottom of it to help keep that kind of eye shape. And kind of similar to cats, they do have that kind of drop down tear duct that makes it look like their eye is kind of stretched out on the corner. All right, so I'm just going to fill it in, leave a little white space for a highlight though. I do not see the other eye, so therefore I am not drawing the other eye, so that's pretty important. And it's something that if you do have a really sharp line right here, I noticed that the forehead kind of slopes more than it does kind of like a really sharp indent. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this a little bit more curved and then erase that really sharp point so that I get a little bit more of a slope to the forehead rather than a perfectly straight line. All right, so I'm pretty much done with the face. I can go back and add more details later, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the body. So before I move on to the legs and stuff though, I want to go ahead and add a little bit of fluff on the edge of the cheek, just because this is a little bit too smooth, and especially since foxes are so fluffy, I want to go ahead and add that so that I don't forget about it. So starting where the jaw meets the head, I'm just going to add kind of like little zigzag lines, kind of like what we've done before. It's that Z line again, but you're just kind of making it wiggle back and forth in order to get that texture. Then I'm just going to do that up until I get across from the ear, and then I can call it quits there. If you want to add more, definitely feel free to, and then whenever you're done, you can just kind of erase some of that extra line that you don't need. Later on, we're going to be adding that fluff texture to the neck, but I want to go ahead and draw the legs and stuff first. That way I can figure out what parts need the fluff and what parts can be left smooth. All right, so we're done with the face, which I think looks really cute. Oh, sorry, I just did that impulsively. I'll do that detail later. All right, so I'm going to start with the front legs. All they are, if you look at them, they're just a greater than less than sign with a paw at the back. So to draw that, I need to first figure out where my shoulder is. So the shoulder is typically where the body meets the neck. So this right here is my shoulder. So if I draw kind of a little circle-y shape right here for the shoulder, that can help me out later. So what I want to do for the leg here is I'm actually going to start at the back of the shoulder. I'm going to go down just a little bit so that I get the elbow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go forward in a slight, not perfect straight line, like this. So it's going to be a greater than less than sign, and that'll make up the elbow. And then what I want to do is I'm going to actually save the paw for just a minute. So I'm not going to do the paw yet. I'm going to go on the other side. So I'm going to start about halfway in the shoulder right here. And then I'm going to do a slight frown, not a perfect frown, a slight frown. And then I'm going to change that into another greater than or less than sign. Notice that we have two kind of opposing greater than or less than signs, and that helps shape the look of the leg, which is very helpful in this case. All right, now that I got my two greater than less than, they're slightly curvy and not perfect, I'm going to go ahead and draw the paw. So to do that, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a parenthesis, connecting this to the, I guess that's the wrist area. Notice that I didn't touch the top of the foot. That's because this, I can kind of see 3 toes here because it's seen from the side. So I don't want to completely touch. I want to leave some space that I can draw other toes. So now that I have 1 toe, I can go ahead and draw 2 toes. And I see a little bit of a 3rd toe going on behind there. And you might see some of the paw pad too. I call those toe beans. They're really cute. But that's kind of up to you if you want to add that additional detail. That's if you just want to go for it or not. All right, so now that I have that done, I can erase this part of the leg because it's no longer necessary. And I can erase a little bit of the top of the shoulder. I do want to leave the back of this part right here. Now, because the fox is so incredibly fluffy, the fluff actually overlaps the shoulder right here. So you can erase the front of the shoulder, but do leave the back right here. And if you want to go ahead and add some fluff, you can, so that you don't lose the look of the back of the shoulder. And something else you can add too is add a little bit of fluff in front. And now that we know where the fluff can go on the neck part, I can add some longer fluffs on the neck until it touches the foot, and that'll give you your nice fluffy fox look. Now, in this picture, there's a very tricky overlap. I only see a tiny bit of the other paw behind the body. So I'm just going to draw a smile or a parenthesis here. I'm just going to draw like a little oval to indicate that that was a toe back there. And if you want to draw like 2 or 3 ovals, you can. That way you're seeing kind of like the toe beans, and that's fine. but you're kind of not really going to see very much of this paw at all. So all I've done is I've drawn a parenthesis. I went ahead and drew another parenthesis in there just to help separate out the toes, and then I scribbled in some little circly textures just to give it kind of a paw pad look. That way it doesn't look like it's attached to this foot. All right, so that was pretty simple for our front leg. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do our back leg. Now the back leg is a little bit more complicated. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with the, not the shoulder, the thigh. So the thigh is just an extension off that kind of noodly thing. So I'm going to start like this by drawing an oval. So it's kind of like I'm using the bottom of the noodle as the thigh itself, and this right here is going to be the belly. Now, if you've drawn an extremely long noodle and you need to shorten it, feel free to move that oval forward. For mine, I personally think that this looks okay, so I'm not going to change it. But if you have drawn a really long noodle, feel free to erase it and scoot it forward a little bit before you draw your thigh. An ideal thing that you could measure is if you measure the thigh like this and then go sideways, if this distance right here is longer than your thigh, you might have made it a little bit too long, and it's up to you if you want to change it or if you want to keep it kind of just like a long-bodied fox, which could be pretty cute. It's like a fox ferret. All right, so I'm going to go and erase the bottom of the body here so that I have just the thigh. And then this, the next part's pretty simple. The back of the foot is out at the bottom of the thigh. We're going to start with a kind of a parenthesis, and then we're going to change it to a diagonal. So it's going to look kind of like a greater than or less than sign again. So bottom of the thigh, I'm going to draw a parenthesis, not too big, not too big. And then I'm going to change that parenthesis, adding that little bit of a wonk by changing the direction, and then going down into a diagonal line. So it looks kind of like a curvy lightning bolt. All right, I'm going to do the same thing kind of on the front. I'm going to start at the front of the thigh. I'm going to curve down until I get across from the ankle. And then I'm going to do a wonk and switch the direction until I get to wherever I want the front of the foot. Once you get to the front of the foot, we can see the paw. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a parenthesis. There's 1 toe, 2 toe, and because I'm seeing it from side view, I probably only see 3 toes. If you're looking at it from front, you might see 4 toes though. All right, so there's the back leg. It actually might have been easier than the front leg. All right, so I can erase this part right here, and then I'm going to add some fluff later. You can also erase part of the inner thigh. I would suggest leave a little bit of that overlap just so that it can help you whenever you get to the fluff parts. All right, so this would be the back of the body, going down to the thigh. We're going to save the tail for last. So I'm going to go ahead and do this other leg. There is some overlap going on here. So it starts at the belly, makes a parenthesis, and then it's actually being overlapped behind this leg, so I don't see the ankle, but I can see where the other foot's coming out of the leg right here. So I'm going to start off with that parenthesis. So I'm going to go about maybe halfway-ish into the belly. I'm going to do that parenthesis, curve down and touch the leg, and then move down just a tiny bit before you start making that other part of the leg come out like this. So all I'm doing is a parenthesis. This is a slight diagonal that is curving down into a slight frown. And then I'm just going to curve that into there's 1 toe, 2 toe, and I might see a 3rd toe and maybe some toe beans, maybe. And then I would see that just curve back into the body like this, so that I get the look of the foot that would be ideally overlapping behind the body here. Now, because this looks kind of weird with the belly being so smooth, I'm going to go ahead and add some texture to the belly. It does have really long fur on the belly. So because the fur is longer, I'm actually not going to do it on the same line that I drew the belly. I'm going to go a little bit below it and then add some of those kind of curvy Z lines to make it look like the belly was a little bit fluffier. And then you can erase that smooth line that was above it, or you can keep it. It's up to you. All right, and then I'm also going to add a little bit of fluff on the top of the thigh there just to help make it look even fluffier. But that's up to you how fluffy that you want to make your fox. All right, so now the fun part is the tail. So you can have the tail going in the same direction as it is on the picture, or you can kind of curve it. I think it'd be fun to curve it and make it a little bit longer than it's supposed to be. That way it's jumping in a circle. So you don't have to do what I'm doing. Feel free to do what the picture's telling you to do, which is to bring it out fairly straight. So either way, you can do it in any direction you want. But key thing is that it's going to start at the back of the spine. So if this is the spine right here, I'm just going to continue it like this. And because I want to make mine exaggerated, I'm just going to make it a big curve like this. So that's how big I want my tail, which is definitely not realistic, but this is art and you can do whatever you want. And then what you want to do is you want to start down lower. So I'd start somewhere right above the ankle. In my case, I'm going to make it super thick. So I'm actually going to start at the tip of the tail. I'm going to make it slightly pointy. I'm just going to curve that all the way back in until it touches right there where it meets the body. So So that's going to be the thickness of my tail. In the case of a fox, they don't get super thin as they get closer to the body. The bone does, obviously. The bone's really skinny, but because there's so much fluff, it just stays fluffy. Now, a good thing to do so that it doesn't look too solid is to add some breaks in the tail. A break is where you erase a part of it, and then you're going to make it look as though there's kind of like a smaller point to the tail coming off like this, so that it makes it look as though there's a little bit more of a fluff texture to the tail. And don't go too crazy, otherwise it'll look kind of more like a horse's tail. But that is a good texture technique that you can do to add a little bit more texture to the tail so that it doesn't look so smooth. So it's kind of like you're adding a little bit of larger fluffs, and which of course you can go back and add those smaller fluffs on top of it as well, just to really emphasize the fact that this tail is definitely super, super fluffy, which is super cute, by the way. I love fluffy foxes. All right, so we're pretty much already done. That was a quick and easy one. All right, something I would suggest doing is adding some fluff on the back of the neck, like this, before calling it quits. You can leave the back of the spine smooth like this if you want to, but the back of the thigh is also fluffy, okay? So if you are wanting to leave some parts smooth, the best places to leave smooth in this case would be the back of the spine right here. The front of the thighs and the legs themselves can be smooth, but keep the back of the legs where the shoulder and the thighs are kind of fluffy. All right, so we're pretty much done. If you want to make it more of a cartoonish aesthetic, then you can just erase your extra guidelines that you don't need and call it done. If you want to make it a little bit more realistic, feel free to follow along. I'm just going to add a little bit more fur texture. So something that I would notice is that coming from the corner of the eye, we have a little bit of a fluff. And this is for a lot of animals, actually. From the corner of the eye, it kind of fluffs out to the cheek. So that's a good thing to kind of draw to indicate that. And then I'm also going to add some additional fluffs. And I'm just looking at my picture as I'm going. I just have it off screen, so it's not in your way. But I'm just adding some little fluffs in some areas that I think would benefit from having a little bit of extra texture. Remember, don't go too crazy with the texture, because if you over-texturize it, it looks a little messy. So only add textures either in the areas that have a little bit of shadow or in the areas that you think are too smooth and they look kind of like awkward being that smooth. And then you can add a little bit of fluff textures. I love adding these. This is like the eyebrow bump. So cute. I love it so much. All right, so I actually don't want to go too crazy with too much more texture. Otherwise, I feel like I'm going to overdo it. So I'm actually going to leave it there for my textures. All right, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to shade. Now, foxes do have some pretty distinctive coloring. Some foxes are pure white, like an Arctic fox. This fox in particular is a red fox. So they have like black feet that kind of like slowly fade up as they go to the legs. So what I'm doing to get that effect is I'm just going dark on the feet, and then I'm slowly lifting up the pressure on my pencil as I get further up so that it looks as though it's kind of fading. And then they also have kind of like orange on the top of their fur. So what I'm doing on that is I'm just kind of shading it so it looks a little bit darker than the white of the fur, but I also don't want to make it as dark as the, what do you call them, the legs and stuff, because I don't want the fur to look black. So I'm just going over really lightly, and which, of course, you don't have to have it a traditional looking fox. You can have it like a rainbow fox if you want. That's entirely up to you. So, all right, there's my little fox guy. I hope you guys had fun drawing him. I would love to see what kind of foxes you guys came up with. All right, have a good day. Bye.